Okay, third person animation. So this is a subject or a part of developing a mod which I think a lot of animators kind of dread. It's seen as sort of something that has to be done but isn't as fun as doing the first person animation. But I have a few tricks that I picked up from my animation friends, which involve making life a lot easier for yourself by simply repurposing the first person animation into the third. So if we go into the perspective view, we can see that the body's going to do some weird stuff when we animate, like the shoulder moving there. But the whole skeleton is still here. You can see the head is bent back to not clip into the camera for the first person animation, but essentially the whole rig is still here that's actually usable for third person, so we can simply load in a pose and reuse this rig for the third person animation, still keep all of the movement and everything, and basically make a third person animation from the first person. So how do we go about doing that? Well, what I've already done is to extract and convert into FBX the HKX files that are necessary for creating the pose that we want to do. So I'll just show you exactly which files you're going to want to export. So you want to be using Bethesda Archive Extractor as usual. Go into the animations, BA2, and then under meshes, actors, character, and animations. If you remember before, you were in first person, and we're able to, let's see, where's the 44? Yeah, 44 pistol. We were able to extract these animations for first person, and there's a lot of animations here. If we go to animations, just animations, which refers to just the third person animations, then there's actually a lot less to worry about, because the way the third person animations work in game is they're all layered. There's a sort of generic animation. There's sort of generic animations for a lot of the different actions, but the key ones here, which we want to export, are weapon assembly pose, which is like the static idle pose of the weapon, and weapon reload, if you feel like it, if you want to see what the third person reload looks like. But we can pull a pose from either of them, because the starting frame of weapon reload is going to be the same as the static weapon assembly pose. So yeah, I extracted these and I converted them into FBX. So next we'll go into biped cat import and import the assembly pose or the reload, either one. Make sure add an update animation is on. I'm not sure if we need this. I'll leave it on because I tried this earlier and it was fine. And as usual, we need to rotate the root. Make sure angle snap is on, 90 degrees. And then this gives us our, I'm getting these brackets on the frames, which I don't really like, so we'll go to preferences, animation, and just turn those off. Key bracket display, that makes it a bit clearer to see. So here we have the animation here. We'll go to the bit bone, click on the available layer, collapse frames per sample 1. That's in the collapse layer now. Then we'll go to pose, and then we'll save the pose as my convention is to put either third or first, depending on what animation, what mode of animation you're in, first or third, and then put the weapon, and then what actual animation it is, whether it's the weapon reload or the assembly pose. So as I've already made it, I'll just overwrite it. Okay, so that's done. We have our pose saved. Now the difference between, I think I saved a clip before. A clip is the animation, the position of the bones over, all the keys and stuff. Whereas pose is just a snapshot of all the positions of the bones in one frame, essentially. So if we go back to our weapon reload, there's a few things we need to do. So let's go to the time configuration and set our start time as -1, step back a frame, click the bit bone, go into our pose, and make sure we have the animation layer selected, and then double click, untick scale data, double click on the assembly pose we just made, and load it. So the body now looks good. We have the pose of the body, but the weapon has gone flying off in a completely weird direction. But we can fix that. Now if we step forwards, it's actually the other way around. The weapon looks fine, and all of our keys are fine, and if we were to continue from here, it would just continue the first person animation as usual. All we've done is step back a frame and loaded the pose. So what we're going to do is we're going to step out of auto key mode, and then we're going to actually grab pieces of the body, and I'll select them first, then I'll say what we're going to do. So we don't need to select the fingers because those are already keyed. We don't need to restore those. So I've got a series of body parts selected, and you can see here we have a frame on -1, a key on -1, and a key on 0. All we do is we drag the -1 key to the 0 key, and then that snaps, or rather overwrites, the positions of the body with the new loaded pose positions which we just loaded. Good, so we'll just keep doing that. Make sure I don't select any of the finger bones, and then we'll select the rest and drag and overwrite. Alright, there we go. Now let's see what we've got. Interesting. So the reason the hands aren't moving is because the IK-FK switch has been switched to forward kinematic FK. So we need to switch it back to IK. That's for both hands, but before we do that, let's get the gun back into the right position. That's the BIP R weapon. All we need to do is drag it roughly back where it needs to be. Okay. Now let's fix the hands. So let's click the hand controller. That's this big one. Go to limb animation and move IK target, match IK-FK, and drag fully to IK. And then that restores the actual hand movement. And then the same with the other one. Okay. So, there's some pretty interesting stuff happening with the left hand. And now, this is because the IK handle has moved really far out. This is probably because I don't really know why this has happened. I think it's some kind of import issue. Probably because the hand started somewhere down here in our first person animation, and now we're sort of snapping it somewhere else. But again, we can also fix this. So I know that the hand has to snap to the speed loader on this frame, so we're still not in auto key mode, so we can move the handle and simply put the hand back roughly where it needs to be. Things don't need to be as tight as in the first person animation, because the camera isn't as close. It's good to still be accurate though, but the camera will be a lot further away. I mean, if you're reloading in third person, the hand's probably blocked by the body anyway. You probably can't see it. So yeah, there we go. This might be a better way to fine-tune the hand, actually. Let's jump back into auto key mode. Or actually, let's jump back out, because if I just adjust this here now, then it adjusts all of these frames here. And then I can go back, and with the speed loader, this is the frame where the position of the hand is set. So if I go into auto key and adjust like this, and then copy that frame by shift dragging. Actually, it's a bad idea, because I think there's a link link constraint being turned on that frame 44, so we don't want to do that. We'll use the curve manager instead. Hold shift and control, and then the hand will stay in the right place, because this was a different key before. So yeah, obviously we're we're gonna have to fix some of the weird arm positioning here, especially in third person. You're definitely going to notice this. So there's various things we can do. Usually when someone reloads, they're not in their combat stance, so they sort of lean backwards. So that's one thing we could do. We could take the spine and a few frames in, sort of rotate the body backwards. Then that alleviates a bit of the arm being so tightly in. We could also move this elbow out, and that improves it a bit more. But there's various tweaks we can do. Basically, the name of the game now is to make the pose look natural. And sort of, yeah, clean up the pose so that it looks right for the third person animation. So you need to take the whole body into account. I wouldn't move the legs or maybe even the hips. You could try moving the hips. I'm not going to try now because there might be issues, but I know for a fact that you can move the spine and parts of the torso without any problems. What else is there? I think, yeah. We need our main controller unhidden. And I think that's actually moved as well. So let's unhide by name. Okay. So this is a problem. The main controller is actually off from the gun. It's not a huge problem. What I should have probably done is gone out of auto key mode, aligned the gun to the controller, and then actually use the controller to, but the IK is parented to the jiggle bone, so I'll have to delete that link. Get the gun back into a decent position. And then reparent the hand to the jiggle bone. Okay, awesome. Fixed it. But yeah, the hand is out now. So it's all about each time you move a bone or change the location of anything, the hand's going to change position. Especially with these links on the different frames, it can cause a lot of problems with that. So if possible, avoid avoid linking. But yeah, linking does help with stuff like magazines. So now that we were able to adjust the, I'll turn auto key back on, you can see that there's a lot of sort of wrist motion here. So you might not want that much Z rotation, the sort of left-right, and you might want more X position, because in first person you want, you want these things to be obvious, because the animation's happening close to the camera, whereas in third person you actually probably want to exaggerate the movement. So in first person, more wrist movement to keep the gun on screen, and things like that. Whereas in third person, sort of larger general arm movement. So I'd probably bring the gun further out to the side, and then actually further out, further inwards to the body. Kind of like that. So we can return this to frame 0, because we don't need to step back anymore. Okay, so I'll keep tweaking this and making sure the bones are in the right positions, and yeah, I'll get back to recording when it's in a better state. Okay, so I consider this to be a good point to sort of show where the animation, what it's looking like currently. Could do with a bit more polish, but right now this is good enough. So the speed loader does move pretty fast at points. I did use this little dummy trick here, where if you go into helpers, then dummy, and then create a dummy, and then align it to the orientation to the hand controller, the hand IK controller, and then parent it to the main controller here, then that'll move with the gun, and then when it's time to return the hand to the end position that it started at, the exact same position, all you have to do is align it with the dummy and make sure you have orientation alignment on, and then yeah, that'll be from frame 0 to whatever your ending frame is. It'll be it'll be the same, which is essentially what you want. So yeah, that's a good trick. You want to leave the at least 10 or 20, between 10 or 20 frames at the end of the animation, just so that there's a good transition period for the reload to go back into the idle. Also, if we hit H to select from scene and select the root, and then go to dope sheet, and we see here the reload end annotation. We want to make sure that the reload end annotation is not on a frame where the gun is currently rotating. So if I was to do it here, then the game would sort of interpolate and sort of mess up a bit. The whole top half of the character would sort of jerk out of position. The ideal place for the reload end is to literally be on the very final frame where there's barely any movement. If that might be best to just shunt it down 2 frames, just to be sure. And then yeah, that's the safest thing to do. Okay, so let's export this and try it out in game. So I found out that if I try and export to the usual folders inside my working folders, it doesn't exactly work. So instead I'm having to export to desktop, and if you get 5 warnings, then that's fine. If you get 6 warnings, then usually it hasn't exported properly at all, and it's usually a path error. your paths are too deep, your folders are too deeply nested, or if you get 12 warnings, it can be that you don't have the txt file that you need in the right place. So make sure you have this file here, just like you have the first person txt file with your first person reload files. I've put the Fallout 4 rig third txt that you get from the animation kit in here. And then we'll save configuration and then back up until we are in the correct path. And then I'll go to desktop and copy the reload into the player folder. You can reuse the reload for the NPCs. We'll do that later. So yeah, let's jump in game and see what the current animation looks like in game. And it might not be what we expect. Alright, let's take a look. So what we have here is the left hand doesn't seem to have IK'd to the gun properly, so if I reload, yeah. All the other parts of the gun seem to move okay, but the left hand, clearly there's a problem there. So if I reload again, watch the neck. So the neck moves back and then forwards when it transitions back in. And the reason for this, if I just actually Alt F4, the reason for this is because in the rig there's a sort of difference between where the mesh and the rig control is. So we need to accommodate for that by actually moving the head more forwards than we usually would. So if I just tilt this forwards and then tilt that up, maybe even more. Something you kind of have to guess in game to get the right, to get it to not sort of lurch forwards and backwards, but I think it's more of a rig problem than anything else. Okay, so the left hand, how do we fix it? So let's first find the left hand IK handle, and that should be here. And what this is it essentially points, just like we have this handle here, which tells the left hand where to point. This handle in game tells the hand where it needs to be IKing to. So we need to parent that to the palm. So let's just select the IK target L. And we want to actually align it to the palm. So if I go into wireframe view, we can see here that this is where it roughly should be ending up, and we should do the same for the mirror L. There you go. And then as it animates, it should. Oh yeah, we also need to link it to the palm bone. Link constraint, add link, then we might as well link it to the IK target, or actually let's just link it to the actual hand itself. Do the same for the mirror. Okay. And then that should be okay. Where's it gone? Ah, that's interesting. Where are we? We're really far below. Okay, so I'm gonna have to align these quickly. It does sometimes happen when you link constraint something. It does tend to fly off sometimes. Okay, there we go. It's moving with the hand. Now I'll re-export again. 5 warnings, that's good. Desktop, copy, and then paste. And then we'll try it out in game again. Alright, so let's take a look. So ignore the left hand because that's the assembly pose and that's old. So if I reload now, good. So the hand seems to move back into the position it should be. We watch the head this time. Then yeah, if we watch it from the front, still it's slightly out, so it kind of slides to the right. So I'll fix that in a bit. But yeah, the reload, the left hand seems to be working fine, and I guess I'll show how to do the assembly pose now. So if I Alt F4 out, all we need to do is take the animation that we have now. I'll first save, and then we'll actually save over the old assembly pose which I did earlier. Select everything, Control A, and delete all of the frames other than 0. There's some link changing frames, but those don't matter. Let's set the frames to something low, like 20. I think it's fine if it's between 0 and 1, but I don't know. All the frames I've exported have been. I think in the past I exported a few vanilla animations, and for some reason they're around 20 frames, even though nothing was happening. Might be safer to do it that way. So I'll export assembly pose. Back to desktop. Grab the new assembly pose we just exported and paste it over right here. Then we're going to copy and paste it. Take the fire single ready slave, copy its name, and then paste it in. So these two are now identical. The assembly pose and the fire single ready slave, they are identical files. And we'll take another look in game. Okay, and nice. I think we're there. Okay, it's looking very good. Just the head movement needs a bit more tweaking and maybe a bit more polish. But yeah, we are very close to a fully featured weapon now. Yeah, I think I can run around. Yeah, I can actually run around with the weapon out because I generated metadata earlier. It seems to still be valid. If you can't run around, then you need to generate metadata again, and obviously delete the old metadata so there isn't any leftover metadata. But this should work now. These poor dogs. They've been killed so many times in the name of testing. So just a quick reminder, if you don't want to go back and sort of scrub through my subgraph, the subgraph portion of this tutorial, all we have here is a bat file, and with just a single line in it, and it's essentially just telling the creation kit to generate metadata or anim text data for this ESP, the ESP which we specify. And once I double click that, another instance of the creation kit will open, at least another instance if you have the multiple editors enabled in the ini file. But the creation kit will open and it will generate and dump an anim text data folder inside here. So all you need to do is copy and then go back to your Fallout 4 and paste in here. I have multiple because you don't really want to switch. You don't really want to merge or have these sort of interact or clash rather. What's the word for it? You want to keep these separate is what I'm trying to say. So yeah, just paste. Keep single folders separate, and if you do regenerate your anim text data, if you generate it again, delete the old one and paste it in anew to make sure that you don't have any excess data in there. Okay, so that's third person animation.